single day, like I've always done and always will.
Passing these bills on the floor, making yet another stand.
Welcome to this week's edition of New York Now. I'm Chantel Destra. Just a few weeks ago, the State University of New York celebrated its second class of Empire State Service Corps. These are a group of SUNY students that take on public service work and support communities across the state throughout the year. Recently, Governor Kathy Hochul deployed the Empire State Service Corps to support food banks in response to concerns that the Trump administration would be removing SNAP benefits for millions of New Yorkers. To understand the work of the service members, we spoke with SUNY Chancellor John King. In that conversation, the Chancellor also highlighted enrollment and graduation levels at SUNY and the calls for additional funding on both the state and federal levels. Here's that conversation. Thank you so much for joining us back on the show today, Chancellor.
Excited to talk with you.
Now, we're about midway through the 2025-2026 school year, so how has the year been so far for SUNY?
We've had a great start to the academic year. Lots of wonderful things happening on campuses, lots of exciting announcements like the governor's $300 million investment in quantum research at Stony Brook, like the governor's Reconnect initiative, where we're providing free community college, covering tuition, fees, books, and supplies for 25 to 55-year-olds in high demand workforce areas like healthcare, advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, and IT, as well as green jobs. So we're excited and looking forward to the discussions with the governor and the legislature about investment come January.
And just a few weeks ago, SUNY celebrated its second class of Empire State Service Corps. How has the program grown within the last year?
It's a fantastic program where 500 SUNY students are paid to do 300 hours a year of public service work. And so this is students who are tutoring in K-12 schools. They are addressing food and housing insecurity on campus and in the community. They're serving as peer mental health counselors. They're working on environmental issues. And these students, they learn a ton from the experience, and they also learn a ton from each other, working alongside folks who are different from them. And this fall, we've actually played a critical role in addressing food insecurity. Just last week, the governor called on us to lead a day of action on hunger across the SUNY system, and our Empire State Service Corps members were working on campus and in the community.
And for our viewers who may be less familiar, can you help us understand what types of research is currently being done on and at SUNY campuses across the state?
Yeah, we're really proud that SUNY is a national leader in research, particularly at our 4 university centers, Stony Brook, University at Buffalo, Binghamton University, and University at Albany. And the research ranges. We are doing phenomenal research on artificial intelligence. UB is really a national leader in that work, but all 4 of our university centers are engaged. We're doing tremendous research work in health sciences at our university centers, as well as upstate and downstate medical schools. We're doing work on battery technology at Binghamton that really is the hope for economic development in the southern tier. We're doing great research around the semiconductor industry, and we've got the wonderful Albany Nanotech facility in partnership with some of the leading semiconductor companies in the world. So we're a national leader in this space, and we continue to work to remind people, particularly our members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, how important it is for the federal government to invest in research at our higher ed institutions.
And you've been pretty vocal about the federal cuts coming from the Trump administration. So can you help us understand how that's impacting the work being done at SUNY?
Sure. So look, for 75 years, the federal government and higher education institutions have partnered in research. If somebody's getting medical treatment today, it's very likely that that treatment was developed on a college campus or at a university-affiliated hospital. If somebody is using a cell phone today, many of the elements of that cell phone, the key components, were developed through university research. So much of the nation's innovation leadership in the world is because of research happening on higher ed campuses. Unfortunately, the Trump administration has been backing away from that commitment, threatening to cut funding for the National Institutes of Health, for the National Science Foundation, canceling current grants. So research that folks are doing on treatments for cancer and Alzheimer's and other technological advances, just suddenly they're having the rug pulled out from under them, losing these grants. We've seen some of that at SUNY. We've lost over $20 million in grant funding, and we've had to go to court in some cases to get grant funding restored. We've had to make appeals to agencies to get grant funding restored. And it's very sad because it's a threat to national security.
And what has been the student response to these cuts from your purview? And how is your office working to sort of calm the potential fears of students during this time when it comes to these federal cuts?
Look, it's very frustrating for our students and our faculty. They're working on potentially life-saving treatments and then suddenly seeing the funding go away. So it's very traumatic. But we are working to make sure that our members of Congress on both sides of the aisle understand how important these investments are for their constituents. And we're also working with the state to make sure that the state invests in our research capacity. Governor Hochul's really been fantastic in that area. As I mentioned, we have a $300 million investment in quantum research at Stony Brook. We just recently announced the launch of a SUNY Brain Institute, where researchers across the SUNY system will work together on treatments for things like Alzheimer's, traumatic brain injuries. We also have just recently announced a $50 million investment at the University of Albany in their RNA Institute to work on better treatment for diseases like muscular dystrophy. So we're going to make sure that together with Governor Hochul and the legislature, New York remains a national leader in research.
And in the summer, you traveled to Capitol Hill to advocate for federal funding for SUNY. So what can you tell us about that trip? And do you think that your efforts were well received?
The good news is Congress so far has been pushing back on the Trump administration's agenda. We don't have a budget yet, but the hope is when Congress gets back to work on a next full appropriations process, that we will see Congress step up to invest in National Institutes of Health, National Science Foundation, that we'll see Congress acknowledging that leadership in artificial intelligence and quantum technology is critical to our national security, that all Americans, regardless of political party, want to see us find better treatments and cures for things like Alzheimer's and cancer. So I'm optimistic. The members of Congress are very enthusiastic about SUNY. The challenge is making sure that they vote on budget bills in a way that's consistent with what they say about their commitments to SUNY.
And it's also application time for colleges and universities. So what can you tell us about the projections for enrollment for next year?
Wonderful news on enrollment at SUNY. This fall, we've seen our third consecutive year of enrollment growth across every sector of SUNY. Our four-year institutions, our community colleges, and our technology campuses. So we're very excited about that. It's a sign that New Yorkers see the tremendous SUNY value proposition, affordable excellence. As we've talked about, 52% of our in-state undergraduates go to SUNY tuition-free because of federal Pell Grants and the New York State Tuition Assistance Program. So people are seeing the great opportunities at SUNY, the fact that we have a place for everybody. If you're interested in environmental science, we've got our Environmental Science and Forestry College in Syracuse. If you want a small liberal arts college experience, a public honors college experience, we've got SUNY Geneseo. If you want a large research university, we've got 30,000 students at University at Buffalo. If you want to go into the maritime industry, we've got SUNY Maritime in the Bronx. Whatever you're interested in, we've got it at SUNY. People are seeing that, and that's why we're seeing these continued enrollment increases.
And with enrollment trending up, what do the current retention and graduation rates look like, and how is SUNY supporting students making it across the finish line?
Yeah, so, I'd say our completion rates and our retention rates are about average in the country. And from my perspective and from the SUNY Board of Trustees' perspective, we want to do better. We want to see those improve. And we've been fortunate, thanks to Governor Hochul and the legislature, to see a major investment in a program called ASAP or ACE. That program, the 2-year campuses are doing ASAP, the 4-year campuses are doing ACE. These programs are wraparound supports, intensive advising that has been proven to help students graduate at higher levels. We're continuing to grow those programs. They're now serving 7,000 students across SUNY campuses, and we expect to grow to 10,000 next fall. But we also have an academic momentum campaign where every campus is working together with faculty to plan strategies for improving advising, strengthening gateway courses, things that we can do with the current resources that we have to help more students get across the finish line. No student starts college with the plan to drop out. We want to make sure that we help our students all be successful.
And it was reported by WRBO that SUNY is potentially worried about the loss of international students due to the current federal policies. So how is SUNY supporting these students during this time?
Yeah, we are very worried about this. And again, this is the Trump administration walking away from a real strength of American higher education. You look at the CEOs of some of the top companies in Silicon Valley, you see a lot of folks who came as international students. International students are a vital part of American higher education. We're better when we're attracting the best talent around the world. Unfortunately, the Trump administration has put a lot of obstacles in the way of international students. We, as well as many other higher ed institutions around the country, saw a drop this fall in international student enrollment. But we're continuing to work with students and with our campuses to make sure that students have good guidance navigating the immigration processes. We continue to work with universities across the world to develop partnerships so that students can start there and transfer here or have study abroad experiences from SUNY at those institutions around the world. So we're committed that SUNY is a global citizen, even if the Trump administration is trying to take us backwards.
And going into the next legislative session, what level of funding will you be pushing for from the governor and legislature in the state budget to support the work that you're doing?
Well, we're extraordinarily grateful, let me say, to Governor Hochul for her deep passion for SUNY. And together with the legislature, she has worked to make sure that we have substantial investment in SUNY. We're very grateful for that. Now, as we go into this next budget session, 2 things that will be top of mind. 1, making sure we get help from the state to cover the well-deserved raises that are bargained with our faculty and staff. And that means we're going to need $100 million in additional operating support to address those collectively bargained raises. And we've been getting that from the state over the last few years, and it's been hugely helpful to our campuses, and we're going to make the case for that. We also have big capital needs across the SUNY system. We've got a more than $10 billion critical maintenance backlog. We've got lots of work we need to do to ensure we have the best facilities. We also want to continue to invest in those research labs that are critical for the state's economic development. So we're going to be advocating very strongly for additional capital investment.
Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today, but thank you so much for joining us today, Chancellor.
Thanks. Always great to see you.
And we were speaking with SUNY Chancellor John King. It may come as a surprise to you that New York was one of the first states to declare Thanksgiving a holiday back in the 1800s. The state is rich in history with monumental facts about the holiday, from proclamations to yearly traditions and celebrations. For more on that, our Elise Klein attended a Thanksgiving event at the State Museum where she spoke with historians and visitors. Here's that story.
Thanksgiving is a holiday celebrated today across the country through a variety of traditions, from feasts of roasted turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce, to watching football and fighting with relatives. The first Thanksgiving that is most popularly known dates back to 1621, but not everything described and pictured from that first harvest is accurate. At a first-time event hosted at the New York State Museum Rethinking Thanksgiving, Perry Ground, a traditional storyteller and cultural educator, talks to members of the public about the misconceptions around the holiday.
I give this all around New York State and at national conferences sometimes, and people are always amazed at what they don't know about this event and what they have been taught, which is factually incorrect. And many people want to know the truth.
The story most Americans know of what is regarded as the first Thanksgiving is a harvest feast between the Pilgrims and the Native Americans in 1621 in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Ground says there are many things wrong with this story and the pictures painted depicting this story. First, the harvest in 1621 wasn't the first Thanksgiving, and the settlers didn't call themselves Pilgrims. Records show other Thanksgiving harvest events dating back to 1565 in Spanish Florida. The English settlers called themselves Saints, and we know them today as Pilgrims because of the Pilgrim Press newsletter. Second, the 1621 harvest wasn't held as a religious observance, and the food on the harvest table wasn't the turkey, potatoes, and cranberries that we all know and love today. It was a lot of seafood and corn. Ground says these are the most common misconceptions.
It wasn't the first. There was one almost 80 years before that, held by the Spanish people. People also think that this holiday is based on a Native American religious holiday. That's not true. It was a harvest feast. It was a big party. That is what they were having to celebrate the fact that they had food to get through the winter.
Ground also says for many Native Americans, Thanksgiving isn't something they celebrate fondly because soon after the 1621 harvest, the Pequot people were massacred in a New England war.
The idea behind Thanksgiving is sometimes painful to Native Americans, but because they equate that negative history that happened in New England and throughout North America to Native people with the idea of the coming of European settlers, often portrayed as the Pilgrims who came in 1620.
Ground says he personally tries to separate the events.
Like I said, I tried to separate those two and isolate the event, which was a positive thing, but also recognize that painful history that exists in Native America because of some of the things that happened later.
Other events that happened later after the 1621 harvest progressed the holiday to what we think of today, and some parts of that history took place in New York. In New York City in 1789, the nation's capital at that time, George Washington issued the first National Thanksgiving Proclamation dedicating Thursday, November 26th, to be a day of thanks. Governor DeWitt Clinton also proclaimed Thanksgiving as an annual holiday around the same time period, making New York one of the first states to do so. Kenneth Davis, a Thanksgiving historian, says these proclamations were also part of a larger group of proclamations, many set for Thursdays in November.
For some reason, Thursdays in November became established pretty early on. But again, when you read of their actual proclamations, they're really talking about a day to be humble, prayerful, grateful to whatever word they used for God.
These are pieces of Thanksgiving history many New Yorkers are not aware of today. Anthony Checkage, a visitor at the Rethinking Thanksgiving event, says he learned for the first time about George Washington's proclamation.
I didn't know what the holiday, the origins of the holiday. Aside from that, I didn't know Washington was the one who first formed it. I thought it was Abraham Lincoln, because that's what I was taught.
Abraham Lincoln's Thanksgiving Proclamation was declared in 1863 during the Civil War and is largely thought to be the start of Thanksgiving becoming a national holiday. Davis says Washington's Thanksgiving Proclamation was done at the request of Congress and at that time meant something different.
It was truly a day of Thanksgiving, which meant a solemn day of prayer and humble reflection, not an excuse for a 3-hour dinner.
Davis adds in 1864, Thanksgiving started to become the holiday that many Americans know today, and it had another connection to New York.
While the Civil War is still raging, a group of New Yorkers sent 3 or 4 shiploads of Thanksgiving dinners to the Union Army that was then camped out in Virginia, attacking the capital of Richmond.
Davis says the soldiers were very grateful, and this was the first recorded meal sent to American fighting forces. According to the 1864 report from the Union League of New York, they raised $51,000 to send thousands of pounds of poultry and considerable amounts of apples, turnips, potatoes, cakes, and cash to a variety of forts that year. The report also shows firsthand accounts of soldiers' gratitude when they received their holiday meals. The final Thanksgiving proclamation came from President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1933. It then became the federal holiday that it remains as today in 1941 after Congress passed a bill and Roosevelt signed it. The holiday also became largely the tradition it's celebrated as today because of Sarah Hale, also called the mother of Thanksgiving.
And she was the editor of a magazine called Lady Godey's Book. It was I suppose you could say it was the Good Housekeeping, or maybe the Martha Stewart of its day. And she had been lobbying for many, many years for the president to make Thanksgiving an official national holiday.
Brown talked about Hale and Thanksgiving proclamations during his Rethinking Thanksgiving event. He emphasized education around this topic isn't intended to take away from American traditions that have grown over the years.
I'm not trying to take away people's Thanksgiving traditions. Eat turkey, if that's what you want to do. That's what I like to do, or watch football, or go shopping, or the other traditions that Americans have created surrounding this holiday. But what I want people to understand is some of the actual history, particularly as it relates to Native Americans.
Brown says this event is important because it's a time when people are thinking about Native Americans, making it the perfect opportunity to educate them on accurate history.
We don't think about them in the same way in the spring and summer, but here, because of Indigenous Peoples Day in October, and because of Thanksgiving in November, Native Americans are on our mind. So it's a good time for us to reconsider how we think about Native Americans. It's a good time to rethink Thanksgiving.
Jennifer Saunders, the director of the State Museum, says the museum felt it was important to put this event together to help celebrate Native American Heritage Month. Saunders stresses Native American history is American history.
So making sure that we're, again, bringing in voices and perspectives from all of the folks who make up American history and New York State history, and Perry is one of those really important voices.
Perry says the impact on educating the public is significant.
The more that we know about each other, the better we can have relationships with each other, the better we can understand each other, and we can share things like Thanksgiving in a positive way.
And for some members of the public, that is exactly what happened for them. Avery Fortin, a local Capital Region resident, had lots of event options to choose from on the November Saturday that the Rethinking Thanksgiving event took place, but they chose this one.
There were several different events that I were scheduled at the same time, and I picked this one because I want to pay more homage to the traditions before the colonizers, if you will.
Fortin says they learned a lot at the event, taking away new knowledge of some of the original harvest table items and a period of time before the Pequot War and King Philip's War, where the settlers and the Native Americans got along.
Paying tribute to the traditions and to that period of peace. And not to be silly, but I'm going to include a lot more corn in my Thanksgiving dinner because it was an original crop, and I want to keep that. And I kind of really like corn.
Checkage also says he didn't know there was a period of peace between the settlers and the Native Americans.
That coexistence. I didn't know that they got along for 50 years. I always thought that, the fighting immediately happened. So, I would say that was I think the peaceful coexistence was probably the biggest thing that I learned.
Sarah Radcliffe, who also attended the Rethinking Thanksgiving event, also says she learned a lot of new things she didn't know before.
I know that many of the stories around Thanksgiving are really not true, but Perry described so many other things that I didn't know. So, for example, the fact that the holiday is only 84 years old, that I had no idea.
Brown said before the event that he wanted people to walk away having learned more and with the excitement to continue to learn more. And that seems to be how the public reacted.
So we have always been affected by this holiday as New Yorkers. And if we understand each other better and we continue with the idea of sharing and celebrating together, I think it will be a good way that New Yorkers can lead us into the future.
Brown says he's very busy around this time of year, giving these talks around the state. But when he slows down for Thanksgiving Thursday, he thinks about peace and coexistence.
I think of the event back in 1621, I think about two very different groups of people getting together to share, to live in peaceful coexistence, because for many years they did live peacefully with each other. And so if we can think about that, if we can remember the way that people from different cultures, from different parts of the world were able to peacefully coexist, then I think we can have a happier Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving for many New Yorkers means family, thankfulness, togetherness, and of course food. Many New Yorkers also helped play a key role in helping the holiday develop. Not only did the state help the holiday grow through proclamations and meal donations to soldiers, but in the 1950s, two Cornell University professors created the Empire White Turkey, a breed said to have changed Thanksgiving dinners forever and become the top choice for turkeys across the country in the years since. Elise Klein, New York Now.
And for more information on New York's rich Thanksgiving history, you can visit our website. Again, that's at nynow.org. You can also subscribe to our newsletter by going to newsletter.nynow.org or by scanning the QR code on your screen. Well, that does it for this edition of New York Now. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next week.
Funding for New York Now is provided by WNET,